Hey, welcome AU family. It is Friday, which means it's going to be a good day. We're going to be hanging out together. So glad that you are here on this wonderful, wonderful day. And we have a special treat today because we have the amazing, incredible Charlie Easton with us today. And he's going to be doing the demo and talking about discovering your voice. And I know you guys are going to enjoy it. It's going to be really awesome. I mean, Charlie is a really amazing guy. He's a really amazing artist, and he's a really great communicator. And you know what? He's got that special British accent, man. So you guys are going to love it. He's going to take you on an adventure. I don't want to give too much away because it's going to be a lot of fun, and I don't want to spoil any of it. I want it to be a surprise when he's showing you stuff, but it's going to be fun, guys. I know you're going to enjoy this. Thanks for being here. And I'm just going to hand it over to Charlie. He'll take you on this great adventure and help you discover your voice today. I'll see you guys next time.
Hello, welcome. I'm Charlie Easton. Welcome to my studio. This is where I get to play around with paint and do a lot of large-scale acrylic works. Generally, I'm not painting in oil much in here. I'm painting in acrylic. So I'm going to teach you about acrylics today. In particular, I'm going to teach you about two things. Firstly, it's about how to create some interesting fall colors in your paintings, whether that's as the main subject of your painting or whether it's a bit more contextual, giving people a good sense of the time of year that when you're going out to paint. And the second thing, it's a very important subject. I'm going to talk to you about how to find your voice. And man, we struggle with that. I think artists in general and a lot of the people that I teach really struggle with what's my style, what am I going to be known for, how far can I push this? And I'm going to give you some insights as to how I think anyone can find their voice and do it in a way that is uniquely you, because it's one thing finding a voice, it's another thing finding your voice. So that's what we're going to work on today. I'm going to do a little bit of work on the computer so I can show you a painting trip that I went on a year or so back that has got tons of fall colors in it. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, I guess, the output of that trip and something that has kind of come to me in the moment and also being reinforced after the fact that ties into the second topic, which is about finding your voice. So there's going to be tons of fall colors. There's tons of stuff about what I think is important as you develop your artistic practice and share a bit about how I've done it in order to create the paintings that I do. So let's get on with it. We're going to go over and check out the stuff on the computer. Okay, so here we are at the computer. I want to take you through a few bits of planning first, because I think it's integral to the painting process is understanding the scene that you're about to paint so that you're well prepared in order to attack it in acrylic. And later on, I'll show you in acrylic why I believe painting fast allows for some great variety in your marks, but also it allows for your voice and your personality to come through in your painting in a very true and authentic fashion. I find if I'm noodling around on a painting or I'm kind of unsure, then my personal voice doesn't come out as clearly. As I said, I'm going to take you through some photos, give you a bit of a sense of a trip that I did to Mount Assiniboine area in the fall colors of the larch season that we get in the high alpine. Beautiful place, lovely place to go and plein air paint, but also got so much reference that I want to work on now. But I do want to talk to you about finding your voice and why I find your voice can be kind of split into two sides. There's the side of it which is all about finding your niches in this is what I'm interested in. This is what makes me tick as an artist. This is what I want to try and achieve. And that's all super important in terms of differentiating you from other artists, because I might choose certain aspects of a scene that would be the way that I would see the world, and the artist that could be sat right next door to me painting might choose completely different elements. So that's a really important part of finding your voice. The other part about finding your voice or your style in your art is how you lay the paint down. And I really believe that being able to paint fast, being able to paint in a very authentic manner, yourself doesn't have any barriers to getting out. You're doing things in a very immediate, spontaneous way. And so that's the way that I like to paint. So in order to do that, I need to be prepared. So come on, I'll show you a little bit about Mount Assiniboine and about the area that I was painting in. Okay, so Mount Assiniboine is in the Rocky Mountains of Canada here. So it's right on the border between British Columbia and Alberta. And as we go in, you'll see Mount Assiniboine is this enormous peak, and it sticks up kind of like the Matterhorn of the North, it's often called, or the Matterhorn of North America. And you've got these incredible lakes, and you can see all this greenery around here. This is all conifers. And the most important or the most interesting conifer that we have around here is the larch. So in fall season, these green trees go yellow. Okay, so let's show you some photos of the trip, because it will give you a bit of context anyway, and it's kind of fun looking back on things like that. Obviously, this is the helicopter going in, and it was pretty fun going in by chopper. You can see the valley here. There was loads of larches starting to turn at lower elevations, but as we got higher up, and now we're at Lake Magog, you can see the larches really turning in the alpine. This is Brent Lynch, a wonderful plein air painter who I was with, another one here, Stephanie Govan, and we set up and did a bunch of paintings. I mean, I was blown away by the colors of these larches, which are conifers, but their needles turn color and drop. And I feel like I'm in Monty Python going, the larch. But anyway, the larch is a pretty incredible tree, especially when it's up in these mountain elevations. It provides really interesting reflections. Everything kind of goes this sort of yellowy orange. Here's a little plein air study that I did of this tree. The background, obviously, I was less worried about. It kept coming and going in the light. Very changeable light up in the mountains. But I was really focusing on the tree. All right, here you go. Here's my painting companions. This is Brent Lynch, Stephanie Govan, Mel McAvoy, who's an artist from Fernie, and myself. And there's probably quite a bit of booze stashed in some of these backpacks. Oh, look, we're probably talking about something very important and artistic here. But you look at this, here we are. The larches getting up into the alpine have got a real kind of vibrancy to them. Just the first dusting of snow on the peaks when we arrived. And you'll see as we go through, more and more snow arrived. This is a little study that I did of a glacier. And often in my paintings, I'm trying to pull a little bit of balance here between the larches in the foreground and my subject matter. And I think I'll probably do that when it comes to doing my painting later on. So stay tuned for that. Again, you can see the larches starting to turn. You can see this is the big main peak of Mount Assiniboine. First Nations law called it, like, I think in their words, it was something like a chimney. I'll show you why in a second, because it kind of almost has its own weather system. But this is giving you a context of the area that we are in. Snow started to dust. You can see it on some of these slopes. And it's starting to provide this really nice sort of bluishness that contrasts against the warmth of the larch. Again, a little dusting on that peak as well. Yeah, here's a little video showing you, this is in fast motion, just how this cloud is sat there and evolves on the top of Mount Assiniboine. It's a hell of a region. So after quite a bit more snow while we were there, you can see there's starting to be some really lovely contrast in the scene. There was also a lot of snow where we were just hunkered down at the cabin, coming down as snow or rain, and so you paint whatever you can, right? But we got out into the snow, did a bunch of paintings. This one very much is about Assiniboine, but you can see that I've got some of this fall colouring that's just providing a little bit of warmth in comparison to the more wintry areas up top, and I really like that. And you start to get this real joy of the white kind of almost optically turns the mountains bluer. So then you have that yellow-orange contrast against the colours on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is obviously blues and purples in the background, and it really separates. And so that was something that I was noticing at the time. I took note of and knew that I was going to use them in paintings in the future. I didn't know at the time that I was going to be doing it on a video for you here for Acrylic University. The weather continued to boil around. There was some when the sun came out, it wasn't illuminating the whole of a scene. It would just do small little areas. So again, that's something that I find very interesting and I'm gravitating towards. So again, this builds towards what my voice is. So I'm going to use that. You can see it up on the peak. Not everything is in full sun. There's still cloud elements. There's little patches of highlights. You can see here, look, this is the snow coming down, the larches up in the high area. This was when we actually departed the region and the snow had really come down at the top. The sun had come out, the larches were just looking spectacular. So I want to show one thing that came to light, and this really speaks to the whole transition of the passage of time at the beginning of the fall or winter season. And this is a peak called Wonder Peak. And when I was there, I don't think I actually painted it. I think it came into a small part of a painting. But the reason I love this, and I love the transition that I saw over time, was this was it before any snow. Then it got a little dusting. And you can see the larches really starting to pop. Then it got more snow. And you can see the way that these larches sort of feed towards this quite dramatically different area up top to down low. Here's it zoomed in a bit more. And there was also these great cloud conditions, as I said, where you were getting fleeting bits of light on the peak. And the sky was darker even than the shadows on the snow. And then again, another light condition here where there was clearly a cloud in between me and Wonder Peak here, really providing a real sort of sense of distance. And now we've got winter up top, and you can see we're leading in through the larches into winter. And then this is one other one where it was backlit, and you can see it very much as winter on the ground now, and it's gone up. So this passage of time and I was gravitating in this scene to the passage of time on Wonder Peak. I was there at such a specific time, only for 4 or 5 days, when we were in that point going from fall into winter. And so I really want to pull that out in a painting. I also want to show that there's this kind of real majesty in this mountain, because this mountain was above us the whole time. So what I want to do is try and pull from this selection of paintings or selection of photographs an image that I can paint that becomes uniquely me because of the observations that I've made. And I've got these 2 images that I'm going to work from, and I'm going to put both up on the screen for me to use as reference. And so this is going to be probably the majority of the scene that I'm going to use. I love the light that's coming in here. I like the way that there's slightly more of this middle ground with the way that the larches in tiny trees sort of are receding, going back towards the peak. But I do really like the light condition above, how it's a bit more stark and dramatic here with a dark sky. So I'm going to use both of those. Now, why have I just gone to quite some length to talk you through that? Well, I am hoping that this gives you a bit of a sense of who I am as an artist, a bit about the trip that I was on, and about the observations that become very important to making a painting uniquely you. Now I'm going to transition over and start doing some painting, and so what am I going to take with me from this? As I've already mentioned, there's really three elements that combine to be the important elements that I want to include in this painting. There's the size of the mountain, which was over the top of us the whole time that we were in this region. So I want this mountain to feel big, to have scale. I want to show those fleeting moments of light that are hitting the mountain because there's such variable cloud conditions, and that we were there for, 4 or 5 days, and there was just never one moment looked like another. And then thirdly, and probably most importantly, I want to share with the viewer this sort of very important moment in time where we're moving from fall into winter. So we'll be having fall in the foreground with the larches very present, very warm, and then moving more into those cools and the dramatic large scale mountains that we'll have in the background. So I'll show you how I do that. But identifying that really builds towards creating a painting that is uniquely mine. I've made observations, I've gravitated towards things, I feel compelled to paint, and that means I'm going to be able to create a very committed painting. I mean, it's really not a bad idea to go through the same process yourself. In the studio, you could write it down if you feel a bit of a fool speaking out loud, or you could actually just say it to yourself. This is what I'm interested in, and commit to it. There's loads of other ways to do it, but I really like identifying the bits that are important and then sticking to them as you paint. Okay, so we're here at the easel. I'm looking up at the images that I've just talked you through. I've got two images side by side up there, both similar scenes, but slightly different feels. And I'm going to create a composition from both of those using a couple of things from one and a couple of things from another. And then that unifies to become my own scene. Just a quick chat about the materials that I'm going to be using here. I am going to be painting on a stretched canvas here. It's 1.5 inches deep. I have put onto this canvas a ground, and what I've done is I've put on there some acrylic gloss varnish. And then I've put in there a bit of, I think probably transparent red oxide or violet oxide, and a bit of orange and maybe a bit of purple, something to create a warm mid-tone. So that's what that is right now. If you're interested, I'm using the backboard is a pegboard, and then I have these little clips that can raise or lower the height on the easel. So that's the surface that I'm going to be painting on. I've got a whole selection of brushes ranging from 1 inch up and down. A range of different softness to them, but I have a whole bunch that I'll take with me, and I don't really know which ones I'm going to be using for this, but I think because I want to have a bit of softness in the mountain, that I will use some soft ones to start off with. I'm generally going to work back to front, and especially is because I want to highlight how big this mountain is. I want it to feel soft and a long way away. Okay, what else am I going to tell you about? So this is my palette. I've graded out so you can see what I'm mixing, and then here I also have all of my paint already scooped out. If you've seen the way that I paint before, I want to make sure that I have lots of paint available to me at any one time. So I have here a whole load of colors already scooped out, and I will just keep them a little bit moist just so that they don't skin over by using a a water spray. The colors that I have, these are all heavy body acrylics. I've got titanium white, cyan, ultramarine blue, dioxazine violet, and phthalo green. That would all be kind of my cool colors. And then in my warm colors, I have magenta, I have violet oxide, which has got a similar pigment as the transparent red oxide, but is just a touch bluer. I've got cadmium yellow light and cadmium orange. And these colors, as I said, you've got cool and you've got warm. And when I find you mix cool into warm, you get a really nice muting. And actually on the painting that I'm about to do, there's going to be a lot of it. It will be muted. There will be some pops of pure color, but generally it's going to be pretty muted. So as I said, there were those three things that I really wanted to focus on in the painting. I want this mountain to feel massive. I want to have this sort of fleeting light. And I also want to have this kind of really important transition of time between fall and winter. So I'm going to have that broadly going from the bottom of the canvas up to the top. So that it's going to be fall in the lower section. It's going to have a lot of warmth. And then as it transitions up, it's going to go into winter with this massive mountain that's overhead. What other bits of kit have I got here? I've got some rag that's important for drying my brushes sometimes. I have my trusty hairdryer because sometimes I want to be painting wet in wet. And but then as soon as acrylic starts to dry, it starts to suck the moisture out of anything that you put down on top of it. So in that situation, what I want to do is I want to have wet and wet. As soon as it starts to dry, I'll then fully dry it and then put more moisture on the panel and then start working wet in wet again. Okay, what else to say? I think that's pretty much it. Let's just start launching in. And what I'll do is I'll start sketching in up on this panel the bones of the piece so that you can see what I'm going to be doing. But I'll start with the rock in shadow, and I'm going to mix this, and I want it to feel fairly warm. I mean, a lot of people ask why I paint on a nice warm unified background. Well, obviously it's very warm. This anything that I put on it is going to look cool, and you see with that daub it looks dark and cool. I like the way that acrylic has got some sort of translucency, and so when I make a mark on here, you'll see the orange coming through. Let's just wet the surface of this. So we've now got a wet surface to work into, and I'm going to use this to draw out the shapes of my mountain. I'm working on the rock pattern. And okay, here we go. That's this sort of secondary peak that's off to the right. And there's a really nice kind of almost like a J shape of that rock that comes down. Now, I'm not going to be able to be super detailed in my drawing when I'm working with you here. But if I was working on a larger piece, I would be spending a lot more time on my drawing to make sure that I got it all right. Because there's a certain amount of expression that I want to have in this from my marks, and I've already talked about from painting fast, but I also do want it to feel like a mountain, and not just any mountain. I want it to feel like this mountain. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but having it roughly accurate will mean that I have good bones. So this rock band kind of comes down here and continues. I really don't mind about these dribbles everywhere. That's okay by me. I actually want this peak to be slightly further to the left. And then what's going on here? That needs to scoop up. So I'm trying to make sure that things are roughly in the right area. I'm doing this in my rock color. And I'm going to put this down and then subtract it by putting the snow on top. But I'm enjoying the fact that this is all very fluid because I want this to feel soft. Because if a mountain feels soft at distance, it generally starts to feel bigger. Okay. Now in this rock, I've put it all in one color, but because some areas are more translucent, I'm seeing more from behind. So it feels like I've got a couple of different values in there. But I'm now going to mix up a slightly darker value of that same rock color. And I'm just going to place it on the underside of these rocks. Because what you get, a way to speed up your painting is to, yes, you need to be working from the scene, but you can make good generalizations, you can make good observations. So I'm noticing that on the underside of all of these rocks where it meets the snow, there's just a hint more darkness. And so I'm getting that on the underside of these rocks. And then the top has got a little bit more, a little bit lighter value. Okay. And I might just put that lighter value in on the top. So I'll just mix into the same pool of paint just a slightly lighter value, because there's a few rocks in here that have got a bit more to them on the top. So we've got now 3 values even within this kind of fairly muted rock band. But it really does start, when you get 3 values in there, it really starts to give it much more of a sense of form. Okay, so lots of dribbles around here, I'm okay with that. And then we're going to have our trees sort of starting to come in, these, fall moving into winter kind of around here. Okay, so that's rock bands. I'm now going to dry off my brush. I've actually chosen quite a small brush to do here because the rocks have got a little, there are quite a few small rocks in there. So I've chosen a small brush. I could have been doing this with a larger one, I guess, but I haven't. Let me just noticed a couple more rocks that kind of went up a little higher here. It's kind of like that secondary band. Okay, now I'm going to mix a color for the snow in shadow. Now, often the tendency on a snow in shadow is to go, oh, well, it's blue. And you start mixing a super saturated blue. Reality is, I think this is going to be a lot less saturated. And so it's quite blue right now, so I'm going to mix something from the other side of the spectrum in. It's an orange, so it's kind of gone to an orange blue there. I'm putting a bit more red into it because I want that to feel quite neutral. And I'm actually going to lighten that up. It's quite useful working on a grey palette because then you can see where you are value-wise. I think this is, let's have a look. We're going to see whether this feels about right for the shadow. That does kind of feels like we got an appropriate value there. I'm now putting in the snow in shadow, and then I'm going to pop out those fleeting moments of light, which we talked about are kind of very appropriate for the day. Okay, so we're working into this brown. You can still see there's lots of orange that's popping through both in the snow and also in the rock. And that orange is a unifying orange. I'm not going to want to have it popping through in loads of different places. Some people do that. All power to them. Not really my thing. I prefer to have it unifying rather than being the star of the show. It's so saturated that I don't want it to really take over, which is the danger when you're working on a very bright background. It's great having a really bright, warm background, especially for fall colors, because it comes through those greens and the blues that you end up using a lot, and the yellows. But here I'm just laying in this shadow color, and some of the oranges coming through, it will actually make this shadow color a lot darker eventually as well. Okay, you're probably starting to see the mountain emerge, at least that's the hope. And these shadows are starting to pull down. As soon as we actually get a lot more of the light in, I think you'll be able to see a lot more about how this is working out. Okay, let's get this in. I think it would be actually quite nice to have a bit more light coming in and hitting some of these larches on that transition period or that transition area. Okay. Now, let's put in the snow in shadow. I'm going to clean my brush and then dry it. And let's mix up a shadow color. And I'm going to, it feels kind of lemony. So I'm taking a big dob of white, going to mix a little bit of yellow in it. I've pulled up quite a lot. So often what I'll do is I'll just place half of it on the side and then mix in. And then I can go back to that little spot if I want it. But that's white and lemon yellow. Now I don't want to go to my lightest value yet, or my brightest bright. So what I've done is I just mixed in opposite side of the spectrum. So yellow will be the purple. I've put in a little bit of dioxazine purple. And so that's muted that, and it's knocked it back a bit so that if I do need another real highlight, I can go and grab it. And I won't have exhausted my full value range. Okay, so I love the way that it kind of rims this light, rims the top of that mountain, and then pulls in through some of these areas here, just catching the tops of those little bluffs. So here we go. This light's dragging across, and the fleeting nature of this light, I think, is going to work really well. It's going to feel like it did when I was there, and it's great to be able to revisit places that you've been to and loved, and have experiences again via your paintings. So, I would encourage you all to try and get into the same headspace. Don't just take a photograph and say, I'm going to paint this. Try and go through the album and go, well, how was I feeling then? Maybe you took some video, maybe you made some notes, and all of that's good stuff. It's really valuable to be able to look back on these things and enjoy them again. You'll do better paintings if you actually relive a place versus just trying to paint the scene just via the photograph. Kind of almost, get back into the same headspace. Okay. So we got these lovely whites down here as well. I'm going to have to go over these a couple of times to really pull them out. But we're starting to get an interesting shadow pattern here that's giving the dimension of the mountain. And hopefully you're picking that up. let's now just stick in the sky. And as I said, I want a dark sky. I want the sky to be obviously lighter than the rock, but I want it to be darker than the shadow. So there's my shadow color right there. I'm going to make it darker than that shadow, and it's kind of, it's an interesting mottled color. Yeah, definitely got a bit of green in there. How do I mute a green if it's become too green? Well, I take a magenta or take some brown. Like that. Let's see. Maybe that's gone in a little bit too warm. Okay. I'm going to try that. And as with all things, the only way to know whether you've mixed the right color is to put it on your panel and see. Okay, so let's put this in here. Well, that's come through really quite dark. And so I can either lighten this, I can either lighten that. Okay, that's come in really quite dark. I think it probably needs to be a bit lighter than that. At least on this left-hand side, I mean, the light's coming in from the right. So I think that this side might be quite substantially lighter. Let's lighten up that right-hand side. I've lightened it and warmed it up over here. And then we'll create this fade through the sky, a transition. Now just cutting out that snow. My canvas now has dried up. The paint that's there is already drying, but there's still a touch of fluidity there. Okay, so that's got a nice little bit of light on it on the right hand side. And then as we move across behind the peak, we're getting a little bit darker. And then we'll continue to get dark as we go out to the left. It's really important that if the values are very similar, let's say between the sky and the snow, we've got to make sure that we're in a slightly different hue. Otherwise they will kind of combine, and then it makes it feel like the mountain's got a hole in it. So as we know, acrylics dry darker. So we will have to reassess this when everything has dried together at the same to the same level of finish, so that if it's a really dry area, then we can then judge the values at that point. And unfortunately, it's tough to know how any color that you mix is going to be seen towards the end. Okay, here we go. Now let's have a look at that sky. That mountain's starting to pop. I feel like the values of the sky to the rock is about right. So everything here feels like it's moving away, especially when I then put in the real darks and the fall colors lower down. This is going to pop, because right now maybe the camera is picking it up and putting lots of contrast in it, but the reality is that a lot of that contrast will be seen to be quite muted by the time we get some good stuff going on in the foreground. I'm going to lighten up just a bit of that shadow. I feel like those shadows have gone quite dark as they've dried. And so I'm just lightening, I'm going to lighten them up. And what this can also provide is a feeling like it's sort of reflected light bouncing around. Yeah, and maybe it needs to go even lighter than that. Yeah, that's about right. So these shadows, the light in the shadows are often where you make your money. And it allows for this kind of feeling of relief, and the light is bouncing around when you've got interesting shadows. Now you can see this is all dried up, so I'm getting a lot of dry marks. I don't mind that, that's okay, but I don't want it everywhere. If I have dry marks everywhere, then I lose variety, and I want to have variety. That's definitely something that I enjoy having. Just working on a couple of these shadows or shaded areas of snow. Okay, this is starting to feel like I've got shape in the mountain. And the light is coming in this like kind of beautiful, kind of almost grey day light. Just mindful of all of these orange dots everywhere. Okay, so now this is starting to dry up. I want this now to fully dry because I don't want it to start sucking in the moisture of anything that I put on top. Okay, there's still stuff that I want to do to the top, but I want to get in the fall foliage down here, the fall larches and the lead into the mountains. So let's get that, because then I've kind of established the bones of the painting. And you'll also see how these kind of muted colors that I put up the top really send the mountain back. So what I'm going to do for this, because I really want to have this transition of going from warm through into cool, is that I'm going to, let me think how it is. Actually, yeah, I'm going to stick in a large body of very dark, very warm color in the bottom. I'm just going to mist the painting again, and let's get this in here. It might be quite wet to work in, but yeah, you can see this is like purple and violet. Dioxazine violet, sorry, and violet oxide. And so it's very warm and very dark. And I'm just going to put that down in a block. There we go. And now that's going to stay wet for a while. I want to see how that transitions up through probably blue up into some of this snowed area. And the little trees that are absolutely teeny weeny little munchkins in here will work their way down. That's too light. They will work their way down into this body that I've got, and it will stay wet for a while. Okay, so these tiny little trees that kind of work their way up the mountain. And they've got a little bit of those larches and a little bit of that larch quality to it. There's a little bit of yellow in there. There's definitely a bit of kind of a warm blue in there. So like a red blue. But they're darker than the snow, of course. And they kind of dot their way up the mountainside. The size of these, if I make these too big, then the mountain is going to lose all its sense of scale. They kind of go up the mountain. So as winter, or I guess as fall, winter comes down the mountain, as fall's going up, how they meet. Sometimes the size of these and the presence of these makes a massive difference to your sense of scale. I mean, not that they're in every scene, but they are kind of here in that scene, and I kind of want to use them. Now, as we start moving forward, we're starting to get a bit more of that larch oranginess in here. And we're going to start to eliminate that orange underpainting. It's still really wet down low here. So I know that if I place it here, I'm going to have a real hit because I'm placing it on the orange background. When it comes lower down, it's going to be softer. Because let's have a look, see where these trees kind of move up through here. I'm picking up more of that wet, dark color. There we go. And I like having counterpoints or balance points. Like if I've got a peak here on that diagonal, I probably want to have something here that's going to hold that peak in check. And if I'm thinking compositionally, the composition is going to have kind of like a roundedness to it. You know, a lot of these square compositions do. So here we go. We're going to have, you know, maybe picking up doing, 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 and then there's something here that kind of sends your eye through. You see what I mean? It's like got a bit more roundedness to it. I want to have a bit more greenth, as my daughter would say, a bit more greenth in these trees as they move up. And the darkest point is kind of at the base of this first line of trees. And so I've got a real dark there right now. I'm going to wash and dry the brush. I don't want to have anything polluting that, but I'm going to put into that real dark. At the bottom, it's kind of dark and cool. So there, I've got in there a little bit of blue. I've got in there a little bit of purple. And that's going to kind of almost roll those trees back up towards the target, which is the mountain. So we're going from full up here, up the mountain. These trees are appearing maybe just a touch too big for my liking. I might have to make them just a bit smaller. And I'll probably do that by taking some of the trees down into this. There we go. Like these ones here is just poking up just a touch too much. Yeah, it's got a nice light to it. I mean, sometimes you got to roll with it. Like I really like the way that this is hitting in here, but maybe you're going to use a little bit of that purple again and take just a bit of it back so that the trees don't feel so tall. That's it. And then you've got this winter coming down the mountain, and you just got this like fall as having its last hurrah. So I've got a few areas of real saturation in here, but the majority of it is quite desaturated. And you can see this really juicy, joyful paint on the canvas here. And I love that. And I'm, you know, as I said to you before, finding your voice is about finding what interests you, and I've described that a lot today. But it's about the language, the way you paint. And I find, you know, painting fast allows me to get a lot of those really interesting marks. And, you know, I can always adapt and change as I go. But I think this is getting a real kind of joie de vivre that comes from painting fast. Okay, where are we at? So we've got fall, we've got winter. It is marching up the slope. I kind of want to have another couple of hits of those lights coming down, perhaps a little lower. This feels like a very big triangle. So let's just pull up. I can still get a little bit of that snow color in relief. And maybe we're just hitting couple of spots down here, you'll notice how the mark itself is very dry now. And so if I want that to be less dry, I'm going to need to wet it again. So here we go. That's gone a bit yellowy. So let's go back with a touch of purple. And I'm going to just move that snow line over here a bit. That's what I want. Yeah, that's better. So I'm now pulling, through doing that, I'm pulling your eye a little bit. It was zooming out. Now I'm pulling it a little bit further back. And I've lost a few of those teeny little trees, which I'll have to put back in. Let's do that. So we got, if this is in sunlight, we've got a bit more sunlight on those larches in the distance. And we're now going into a lighter area, so we can put those trees in a little bit lighter, in this kind of greeny, muted grey. Now we're starting to get more of a smooth transition between fall and winter. That's it. Okay, now there's definitely some additional rendering that I want to do to the rocks. I want to bring them down. So I've just remixed that color. It might appear differently because I'm now painting on blue rather than painting onto orange, but we'll see how this goes. That's come across quite harsh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hairdryer and give it another dry. Okay, so now that that's dry, I can spray it again, so that when I now try that, let's try it again. Yeah, I've got a slightly more softer line. You see that? How it's a lot softer. And this is working across this, showing the striation of rock. One of the things that I like about painting on an orange canvas or a warm canvas is that you do get this feeling of reflected light in the shadows, because it just pokes through naturally. And I think that makes quite a big difference. Okay, let's try a bit more snow color, because I'm going to paint in that snow color in the rocks, like up here. This is wet and wet again. And I don't actually often paint at this size in the studio. I'm often doing it this size on location. But I kind of got a feeling that this could work quite well as a larger painting. So I'm enjoying the fact that I'm figuring out some of the challenges as we go, and you're my witnesses here. Because then I will be able to, when I then actually go in to paint a larger piece, I'll be able to paint it fast. And it might not work, but I just do find that the faster I paint a scene, often the more joy that I'm able to retain in it. And so, you know, I do recommend painting fast. Challenge yourself, because sometimes it's difficult to paint fast. Sometimes we just want to dwell on everything. But if you do that, that's fine. But just you consider it part of your preparation to then go away and say, now I'm going to paint this again twice as quickly as I did before. And because you're prepared and because you have a good sense of what's going on and why you're doing things, I bet you're going to create something that has just a touch more enjoyment, and also a few more things that you could say, yeah, that's uniquely me. So if we're talking about finding your voice, I do find that that is a very useful tip. Okay, so that mountain's starting to feel a long way away, which is great. Now, one thing I do want to do is I want to just zap up some of those highlights, because it gives it that sense of the fleeting light. And so before, do you remember I put out this blob of white, put in some purple and yellow. This time I'm going to dry my brush. I've cleaned it and I want it to be nice and clean. And let's find a spot that doesn't have any paint on it. Let's go up here. And that's just white with a touch of yellow. Now, for those areas that have real strength of value to them, this is going to be perfect. Like, there's such a lovely hit in some of these areas. Okay. This little secondary peak has got some lovely relief to it. This is called Wonder Peak, and it is a it is a wonder. All of these little noodles on here, and you can now see this color that I've just put in there. This value is substantially lighter than the way that the previous snow color dried. And yeah, that's just the way you kind of, the acrylic takes on the color of the ground. So it's got more orange in it there. And it's gone a little darker. There's a lovely little line that I want to get on the top of that band. And it kind of comes up there. There we go. And on there, there's a bit here. Yeah, this is starting to get some good light. I'm just hitting these little bits as the light is kind of starting to go overhead. I kind of want that to be a little light lower down. I had it in there a bit, but maybe something central that just brings you back in. Yeah, something like that. So, you know, I think you'll probably notice that, and you may have heard me say this before, that I want to get the bulk of a painting done fast, especially outside, just in case things change. And I think, you know, if we were to stop here, there's lots of tiddling that I could do. But if we were to stop here, I've got a lot of information that I could work on later on. Or I've got stuff here that I could use for another painting. And you've really got to consider that all of your paintings are a learning experience. And if you do that, then you will be able to get so much more out of your paintings than simply just a finished piece. You start to develop your voice. And as we've talked about, that's really what I'm hoping that you're able to get to as you go to do your paintings. It's like, what is your voice? What is the way that you approach things? And, you know, unfortunately, there's no substitute for doing. You know, if you're only doing, you know, 1 or 2 paintings a month, you're probably not going to find your voice as quickly as if you said, no, I'm going to paint every day for a month. And you'll probably figure out through that, what are the things that I gravitate to? And what are the things that I love to render? What are the things I'm good at? And also, when you start painting like that, you start to build a confidence. And anyone that has a voice in art, generally, it will be a confident voice. Meek voices, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be like aggressive, but meek voices, ones that sit in the corner, they often get, you know, you're not able to put your finger on it. Oh, what did that person mean? What is that person saying in their art? And I don't want to dismiss people that have a sort of a quieter voice, because I love quiet voice paintings. But you can have a quiet voice but still be committed. Now I just want to see what it would be like to get a little bit of blue in the sky, because there is in one of these shots that I'm using as a reference, just a nice little bit of relief in the sky. Yeah. So I'm just sort of scumbling over here right now. I think that's going to dry too dark, but that's probably better. It's nice. It just breaks up all of that, the green that I have in the sky. And it also sort of tells you, yeah, that's why I've got blue, some blue in my shadows. It's also like one of the largest areas there. So it's nice to just have a little bit of relief in that green. Let's try it up here as well. Yeah, that's going to be too dark when it dries. Just breaking up that kind of the darkness there. Yeah, as I review this, I can see that this area down here, I've kind of made that pop a little bit too close to the edge. So I'm just going to lift it up by making it just a bit stronger higher up. A few of these larches in the dark, just a bit stronger here. And then closer to the edge, I will take it back down to that really nice dark warm color. And now that that's wet again at the top, I can start punching a bit more of those larches. So I'm not trying to render every single larch. It's not like that little painting that I showed you earlier, where I actually tried to paint each and every bit of the larch, because these are contextual. It's like we're just talking about fall colors. We're not necessarily talking about they have to specifically be larches. But these fall colors have got a real warmth to them and a real kind of pop to them. And it's definitely fall, and this is definitely winter. And so I'm enjoying the way that they're kind of working together like that. Okay. So there we have it. Lots of little tiddly things that I could do, but I'm getting a good sense of this sort of transition, the fleeting moment, and the scale of this mountain. So I will take a photo of where I got to, and you'll be able to see this in a little bit more detail than perhaps the video that I've been taking. And I hope you've got something out of it. I hope I've given you a bit of a sense of how I try to find my voice, both in terms of the things that I gravitate to and also in terms of the way I lay down the paint. And I hope that you enjoy painting the fall colors this year. It looks like it's shaping up to be a good one. And I will be outside painting as much as I possibly can. And I hope you do the same. So thank you very much to all of you for tuning in. And I hope you've got something out of this demo about fall colors and finding your voice. I'm Charlie Easton. Check out my work at charlieeaston.com, Instagram at Charlie Easton. And yeah, thanks for following along.